One of the biggest mistakes players make in Satisfactory is trying to build the perfect factory from the start. You can plan everything, the layouts, the ratios, the belts, the floors, and then 5 minutes later, the entire plan breaks. Your inputs change, your logistics get messy, and suddenly your perfect design doesn't work anymore. But the truth is, building massive factories in Satisfactory isn't about perfect planning, it's about having the right mindset. And there are 3 ideas that make building huge factories much easier. Let's get right into it. When people think about building a mega factory, they usually picture the entire thing all at once. Hundreds of machines, dozens of production lines, belts going everywhere, and trying to plan something that large all at once can definitely be overwhelming. So instead of thinking about the factory as one giant system, break it down into small, manageable pieces. For example, instead of saying I'm going to build a massive computer factory, start with something smaller. Once that works, you can move on to the next piece. Each piece becomes its own small project, and suddenly the giant factory isn't one massive problem. It's just a bunch of smaller problems or smaller tasks solved one at a time. And this approach not only makes the project easier to manage, it also helps your designs improve as you build. It allows for a lot more flexibility on the individual task level. It's totally okay if you get overwhelmed with one project to stop what you're doing and maybe start on something else. Start on a different project, produce a different item. That thing will still be there for you when you get back. The biggest advantage that Satisfactory has is that the game doesn't have a timer, it doesn't have a countdown, it doesn't have enemies coming at you. You can take your time. You could do whatever you want, whenever you want, so use that to your advantage. Another thing that I find helpful when I'm stuck on how to design something is I don't design anything at all. I stop trying to produce the lines, I stop trying to make more items, and I start building. I start trying to play around with different creations, different designs of buildings. This game has a lot to offer in the creative aspect, not just the production aspect. And by building different things, you can use the creative part of your mind to kind of distract yourself from the production. And then when you come back to trying to produce different items, you look at it with different eyes, and sometimes that's exactly what you need. And that leads right into the second point, that is, your factory will definitely be messy at first. 99% of the time, your starting factory is going to look like this, and that's completely fine. A lot of players try to avoid spaghetti belts and make everything work seamlessly right from the start. But early in the build, messy systems can actually be useful because they let you experiment, you can test ratios, you can see how the resources flow, and you actually get production of resources early. You need these early resources in order to make your final vision come to life. So it's okay to have a messy build at the start. You're going to make it way easier in the future. Instead of trying to build the final version immediately, create a rough version first. And then once you understand the system better, the messy prototype becomes the blueprint for something cleaner and more scalable. And that's exactly why the third point is the most important point. Use blueprints to scale what works. Once you've broken your factory into smaller pieces and experimented with the layout, this is where blueprints become incredibly powerful. Instead of rebuilding the same design over and over again, you can save a working module as a blueprint. Now you don't have to place down individual machines, you have a solution for a larger problem in your blueprint. Maybe it's the smelting setup, maybe it's a constructor line, a modular production floor. Whatever it is, you can make a blueprint that helps solve that particular problem. Another thing I found extremely helpful when thinking about how to design a factory, or a blueprint for that matter, is the inputs and the outputs. You can see that some of the blueprints that I've made have a 1x4x1 or a 1x4x1. This means that it has one input into 4 of that type of machine into 1 output. Now, I may not necessarily need this type of blueprint every time, but it allows me for when I do use this blueprint to know, okay, I have one item that I can move into 4 machines equally that will then produce 1 output for that machine. By designing my blueprints this way, it makes it a lot easier for me to say, okay, how am I going to get the item into the processing part of the blueprint, and how am I going to move the processed item out into the next stage it needs to be. Organizing the inputs and outputs of this particular blueprint helps me to manage the inputs and outputs of the factory in general. And I think that's one of the biggest tips I can give, is that when you think about the input and the output and keep asking yourself, what is the input and what is the output? Where does the input come from and where does the output go? That will solve a lot of the problems you'll face, because then you can know, okay, I'm going to produce this many items from this blueprint. You go, okay, so these items need to go somewhere. These items can go in a blueprint. That is for outputs. So there is the output. The input for this storage blueprint is the output from this production blueprint. And you could see how this exponentially decreases the amount that you need to think about when you scale this blueprint up as many times as you need for a particular item. Once you've created these blueprints, now these mega factories and the problems that they create become a lot easier to solve, because you've made solutions to bigger problems with these blueprints. One good module, like this one, can solve a lot of issues later down the line. When you have a lot of resources flowing in, all you have to do is create one big blueprint and then place down that blueprint a few times instead of one constructor 60 times. And because each module was tested first, the entire system becomes far easier to expand. The point is, building a mega factory in Satisfactory doesn't require perfect planning from the start. It requires the right approach. It requires the right mindset, and you have to be able to break big ideas into smaller problems. You have to embrace that early chaos. And once you find that thing that works, make a blueprint, scale it up, and now the biggest factories in the game aren't that big after all. If you've been experiencing this problem and could use a different mindset, smash that like button. Leave a comment down below if there's a tip that you know that I didn't mention or something that's worked for you along these lines. Our Backseat Let's Play is coming up. Make sure to subscribe to get notified when that first video goes live so that your ideas can be in the next one. I'll see you over there. It's Tiny Tao. Peace.